All right. Simply going to go through 8 guidelines when it comes to ethics. Sound good? So we'll list them, and then I'll talk about them just a little bit. Sound good? First ethical guideline that you need to keep in track. What we're doing is we're imagining that you've gone through your college degree, master's program, professional degree, right? And you're a researcher, professional psychological researcher now. Now, you have to keep these things in mind whenever you're going out and you're doing your own research. Okay, first one, legality. Just because you're conducting research for the good of science doesn't mean that you can circumvent the law. So the scenario that we presented last week, we talked about the correlation research method, where we're interested in doing a study on alcohol consumption and its effect on students' performance in the high school classroom. That's illegal, so you can't do that. Sound good? So you cannot violate the law, even if you're, really interested in some of that research. Number 2, it has to be institutionally approved. Institutionally approved. So if I wanted to do some type of research, and I can't do this for other reasons. First off, I'm not a professional psychologist. But if I want to do it here at the high school, you would have to go like the administration, and you would have to go to like the school board to get approval first before you could do any type of research here at the high school. Sound good? Now, of course, our naturalist observations, that's informal, right? We're not publishing them or anything like that, okay? So we get away with it there. Informed consent. When you are conducting research, you need to make sure that your participants do have, giving you the right to have them as a part of your research that way. Now, there are some like gray areas with like naturalist observation, right? Are you going to be able to walk around and say, can I have your informed consent to be a part of, I want you to be a part of my naturalist? You can't do that, right? Because them knowing that they're a part of the research, what does that do? Yeah, it makes them act differently than what they normally would do, okay? So it's kind of like a sidebar to this, but there's this research in sociology class. We talk about it quite a bit. The name is Hawthorne effect. You may write that out to the side, okay? So it's a little bit different from this idea of informed consent, but this idea of knowing what's going on, skewing one's behavior. There was this research that was being done on work productivity in the workplace, and so these researchers came into like this factory-like setting, and what they were wanting to mess around, the variable that they were concerned with was lighting. And so they come in, and they measure worker output. They come back in again, and they increase the lighting, and they measure worker output, and worker output goes up. And they think they're on to something. They come back in again, increase the lighting one more time. Worker output goes up again. They're like, yep, we got more confidence in what we're doing here. They come back in one more time, and this time, instead of increasing the lighting, they make it actually dimmer than what it was at the very beginning. You know what happened to worker output? It went up again, even higher. So what's the key variable there? What contributed to worker output? Was it lighting? Nope. What was it? Change? Yep.
Just the fact I knew they were being watched.
Exactly. All right. The researchers, the presence of the researchers was the key variable there. All right. So that sometimes creates some challenges for a psychologist in naturalist observation settings if you're doing this idea of informed consent. Sound good? Deception. That's what the GIF is in there for, if you're wondering. Being deceived. You may want to write this up to the side with deception. You can only use deception when you feel that knowledge of what's going on will skew the outcome of the results. Okay? The results of the research. You can only use deception. You can really just put it this way. You can only use deception when necessary. Okay? They have this particular guideline, ethical guideline in there to keep you from, as a researcher, just deceiving whenever and wherever you want. All right? Have some sense of integrity when it comes to using deception in research. So you can only use it when you feel like the outcome of the research would be skewed if the subject knows exactly what is going on. Okay? So there are some limitations when it comes to deceiving the participants of your research. All right, the last 4. Debriefing. Debriefing. This means that at the conclusion of your research, you need to share the results, and if you use deception, you need to communicate that to your subjects of your research, the participants in your research. Right? You can't just let them go off on their merry way without informing them that you have deceived them. Okay? Or without informing them of the results of the research that way. Okay? You remember, right, John B. Watson out to the side? John B. Watson was one of the early psychologists. He's a big behaviorist. He started that particular psych perspective school of thought beginning of the 20th century. And he did a study on a boy named Little Albert. You may write Little Albert out to the side with John Watson. Okay? With his study, he wanted to show that environment dictated one's emotions, and he could manipulate one's emotions. And so he brought this little boy in. Again, his name was Albert, and he wasn't afraid of white rats, ironically. You know, most of us are a little bit fearful of those, but he wasn't. Okay, so Watson wanted to change that and make him afraid of them. So every time, what he would do is he would put a white rat in front of Albert's face, and then he'd take a hammer and a piece of sheet metal behind his head, and this little boy, and he would go bam behind his head. All right, presenting the white rat, boom, over and over again, multiple pairings, like 20 times over. Then, after a while, all you have to do is put the white rat in front of Albert's face, and what would he do? Start crying, right? You have that fear-like posture because of that pairing over and over again with the loud noise, okay? Now, the reason why we talk about this with debriefing, Watson and his associates did not debrief little Albert, right? The plan was to recondition him to get him past that fear, get him back to his original state, but that didn't happen. So Albert went on his own way, and we've got to assume that there were some issues, because what happened was, not habituation, but generalization took place. What generalization is where you have a stimulus that has certain characteristics. If any other stimulus has similar characteristics to the original stimulus, then you're going to respond in like manner. So the rat was white, so anything that was white, he would have a fearful response to it. Okay, so like Watson's white lab coat, right? Albert would be afraid of it. Okay, Santa Claus's beard. I know children are sometimes already afraid of Santa Claus, but little Albert was really afraid of him because of the white in his beard that way. Sound good? So we gotta assume that little Albert had some issues later on in life because he was a participant in Watson's experiment that way. Sound good? So you as a psychologist, you have to have some sense of integrity and go through the process of debriefing your participants. Subordinates. You can't use subordinates in your research. Okay? Can anybody think about why? If I wanted to use you in my own study, what would be wrong with that? What could I hold over your head? Yeah, Mr. Beckenor.
Our grade.
Our grade. Your grade, exactly. And so that means I could skew your behavior and make you, do some things that you normally wouldn't do because I've got some kind of reinforcement over here manipulating you. And that would take away the accuracy of the research there. Okay? Can't use subordinates. Payment for participation, write this out to the side, cannot be excessive. Cannot be excessive. Mr. Glick, you said you were a part of some research? You said the medical stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They help. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not true research, I guess, in a sense this way. But usually if you're a participant in research, you get paid, $20 an hour, something like that. Right? Not bad for a college student, right? What if I told you that I've got this research going on and I'd pay you, $500 an hour, right? Don't you think that would manipulate one's behavior inside of that research, make them susceptible to doing something that they normally wouldn't do? Yeah, so it cannot be excessive. And the last thing is publication. Once you conclude your research, sometimes the research that you get isn't exactly what you expected, isn't exactly what you wanted to get out of your research, okay? So sometimes you may want to hide it because it's not what you wanted. But the idea is that you've got to publish it, all right? You got to put it out there, and you have to allow other professionals to take a look at it and then critique it, meaning that they try to replicate. Give them an opportunity to try to replicate what you have found. Sound good? And so that's how you build off of one another in the profession of psychology. So you're asked to publish your research and your findings. Sound good? So there's 8 of them. Make sure you familiarize yourself with them. We're going to get a little practice here before we go away from this. Let me stop this.